Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Chase with Jace. I'm your host, Jace Lejeune. And man, we're going to talk about what pretty much the season coming out of the rails this year for LSU football. But we're going to talk a lot. I mean, there's a lot to talk about. Obviously, if you're covering, you've been around LSU, talking about LSU. It turns out there's a lot to talk about when it comes to the LSU fighting Tigers this year. I know people are starting to fall in right now, so feel free to comment. Make sure to drop a comment, like wherever you're watching this show. You could be watching the show on Facebook, on X, on YouTube, whatever you're watching the show. Make sure to share it out. Make sure to be involved. And we want you to comment below if you have a question, if you have a comment about the LSU Tigers. Make sure to comment in the comment section. We want to have a conversation with the fans. That's why we have the show every Wednesday. I know we got a lot going on with our high school football coverage, whether it's our Ball in the Booty. Go check that out. Myself and Spencer Verrett, we broke down all the 8 high school football playoff brackets. We'll be doing that every single Monday. I had to go and edit the show to kind of edit the video a little bit, as pretty much had to readjust my schedule just a little bit because of that. And then, of course, today with the Chase with Jace, and we'll have the Going Bowling Show posted after this show is over. But for now, we're going to talk about the LSU Tigers, and there's a lot to unwind and talk about. First, I mean, there's a whole lot of different topics. I mean, we're going to talk about the LSU game against Alabama last week. We're going to talk about Arkansas coming up. And then just the nature of it, the LSU head coaching search, where is that right now, and kind of following updates, what's going on with the LSU head football coaching search. So, like I said, as we get people falling in on the stream, and we get questions, and we get all kinds of comments on wherever you're watching the show, make sure once again to like it, make sure to share it out, and make sure to get involved. Leave a comment, leave a question. If you have a general comment about the LSU game last week, what are your thoughts on it? That's my question about the LSU game. And my comment, I guess my question to the fans that are watching the show today, my question for you today is where do you see LSU moving forward in terms of this year? What do you hope for them to achieve over these next 3 games? As LSU is currently 5-4, 3 more games left to play until the end of the season. LSU, all they have to do is win 1 more game, and they are bowl eligible. But this is not exactly. I mean, we talked about before the season what those conversations are like. I mean, this was a all-in year on LSU, playoff, college football playoff or bust. We talked about the $18 million, $20 million roster. It really took to get all these guys here. You return a 5th-year starter at quarterback, and you thought that this was going to be the year where everything's been put together and LSU was going to go on a run for a college football playoff berth. But now we look at November 12th with 3 more games left to play. LSU's shots at all that are out the window. They're damaged, and now you're kind of looking at a lost season to this point. And really the question moving forward, we'll go and address that over the next hour. We'll be here over the next hour of the show talking about it. But where does LSU go from here? What do they have to go to? And what are you kind of looking at? I mean, what is there to really watch and like about and talk about, since, at LSU, your goals are to make the college football playoff, and once again, you are not going to get there. So first of all, I'm going to talk about the LSU Alabama game. 20-9 is your final score from Saturday, and the sad thing was, when we talk about this game, this Alabama game on the road, it was a winnable game. It was out there for LSU for the taking to win that football game, be honest with you. And this was one of those games where Alabama didn't necessarily do, really that much. Now, they didn't make a ton of mistakes, and they just kind of took advantage of LSU's blunders, their mistakes, and they're able to win that football game and just kind of cruise control their way. It wasn't Alabama's best effort, especially offensively. You got to give LSU, you got to give Blake Baker, you got to give the Tigers defense a lot of credit for this football game. I thought the LSU defense played inspired. I thought they played the lights out. I know I've had a couple comments saying, well, that's what you expect from the LSU defense. I got that comment as well on Twitter. And I mean, be honest with you, you can say what you want. That's how you're supposed to play. When there's a lot of things going against you and your offense continues not to move the football, you're on the road, your season's dead, and you still play like that on defense, to me, that's inspired football, especially when your offense is not – has really been underachieving all year. You're with the interim head football coach, all this going on. I mean, the LSU defense rose to the occasion against a really good Alabama offense. Ty Simpson is a Heisman Trophy candidate. And you look at that side of the football, LSU did what they're supposed to do on defense. If you told me that LSU on the road gave up 20 points to Alabama, I thought, hey, you got yourself a great shot to win that football game. But it's just been kind of par for the course this year. It's been the LSU offense that's been underwhelming and has not been able to get the job done for LSU. 20-9, your final score. Frank Wilson, a quote about the game. He said, I thought we played hard. I thought we competed throughout the duration of the game. At the end of it, our best was not good enough. We finished second, but I thought there were some good things that happened, and there are things that we need to continue to improve upon, that we have to score touchdowns and not just field goals. We need to take better care of the ball. 3 fumbles on the ground and 2 picked up by the opponent. That was a difference maker for us. And the problems for LSU reared its ugly head once again this season. What has been a problem for this LSU football team this year consistently? It has been every time when LSU has gotten inside the 20-yard line. That has been a big problem this year for the Tigers. There have been moments where LSU has moved the football. We can say all we could say. We'll talk about the quarterback situation kind of moving forward as we end the season. But LSU has moved the football at times. It's just when they've ever gotten inside the red zone, inside the 20-yard line. It just seems like this LSU football team just seems to forget how to play football when they get inside the 20-yard line. That's what happened here. You had 4 trips inside the red zone. 3 of them, you had to kick field goals from Damian Ramos. And the 4th one was actually a missed field goal from Damian Ramos. But you settled for 9 points. You were in the red zone 4 times. You settled for 9 points. I believe this was the first game since the infamous 2011 national championship game. When remember LSU couldn't get the ball past the 50-yard line, and they lost the national championship to Alabama. That was the last game LSU was held out the end zone. And LSU was held out the end zone against Alabama on the road. And you had your chances early on. Your defense gets a 4th down stop, get the offensive ball back. They move the football a little bit, had to settle for a field goal. Damian Ramos misses that field goal. So that was just one of those opportunities that you missed in the game. LSU was down 17-3 in the first half. And I mean, you just look at it. The defense gave up a couple chunk plays for that second touchdown, but they hung in there. You're down 17-3. In the second half, your defense did all they could to really help you in this football game, as they held Alabama to only 3 points in the second half. That was all they scored in the second half. So the defense played inspired. They played the lights out. Ty Simpson, 21 for 35, 277 yards, 1 touchdown. And they got a touchdown run from Daniel Hill and a 13-yard touchdown pass from Simpson to Ryan Williams. That was all the touchdowns that night in that football game. And LSU had a 4th down stop. Harold Perkins, remember, he had a great play on the sack fumble to give LSU the ball back. But the defense and their performance on Saturday, that is going to be overshadowed by how poor your offense was. I talked about the red zone. That is one big issue you had on Saturday. Another big issue you had on this past Saturday was penalties. That was a big stat line. LSU had 10 penalties in this football game. I believe Alabama only had 2. This was just a moment. Neither team played their best, I can tell you that. Both teams were not sharp, but Alabama was a more disciplined football team on Saturday night. LSU was not. And that was really the result in the scoreboard that you had. You had plenty of times you mismanaged the clock. One occasion you had a delay of game, and then the next play, like right after you have a delay of game, you have to burn a timeout. So that is twice in a row where you mismanage the clock in that situation. Now, I know there's a lot of new. You have a new interim head football coach, right? It's not Brian Kelly leading the way anymore. You got a new offensive coordinator. It's not Joe Sloan anymore. It's Alex Atkins that's calling the plays. So you're doing a lot of that, but you still have your fifth-year starting quarterback. And another thing about this game that Garrett Nussmeier, I mean, he finished the game 18 for 21, 121 yards, but there were some plays to be made. There are a lot of passes behind the line of scrimmage. There were a lot of screen plays, plays that did not go above the line of scrimmage. And when you have a lot of plays being thrown behind the line of scrimmage, I mean, it's only a matter of time before defenses can really pick up on that. So Melissa Ward chiming in there today. And like I said, if y'all have any questions, we want y'all to interact. So feel free to, with as many questions, general comments, anything that y'all have about the LSU game, feel free to comment below. We're going to talk about the LSU-Alabama game. We'll talk about that for a little bit, and we'll talk about what's ahead for LSU as they conclude the season. Good evening. Isn't Arkansas looking for a coach as well? Also, remember, I threw Nick Saban's name in for LSU coach again. So about that, Arkansas is looking for a coach too. They are, if you look at 4 SEC teams are looking for head coaches right now. So if you keep track at home, it's LSU, it's Auburn, it's Arkansas, and it's Florida. Those are the 4 teams that will be looking for a new head football coach. And right now, if you look at it, these are 2 coaches that they're on an audition. Now, Bobby Petrino, he is the interim head football coach at Arkansas. Remember, Bobby Petrino led Arkansas to some pretty big heights. At one point, you remember the 2011 LSU-Arkansas game, it was the winner of that football game would play for the SEC championship game and probably for the national championship, and LSU won that football game. So it's going to be interesting to see what Arkansas does, but they are in the market for a head football coach. Nick Saban, his name is going to be always in the headlines. We talk about LSU and their search for a head football coach. I believe he's right at the top in terms of the, looking at the odds for next year, right? He's on, his name's on the top in terms of the next head football coach at LSU. How likely do I think that is? I still don't think it's likely with Nick Saban. I know there's a lot of fans that want Nick Saban to come back. What a cool story it would be for him to go back to LSU, a program that he really started to build, before he left for the Miami Dolphins, and then obviously for Alabama later on. But I just think Nick Saban enjoys what he's doing now. I really do. I think he enjoys being on the ESPN. I think he enjoys getting paid. The downtime he has with Miss Terry and his family. This is a time for him to get to relax and enjoy himself and not get stressed out by the natures of college football. And I think that's the reason why he left Alabama, right? The NIL, the transfer portal, I think it was getting too out of hand, and he didn't want to deal with it anymore. I think that's a big reason for it. I certainly do not think that Nick Saban is going to be back at LSU. Maybe does he put a hand in it? Maybe they go to him and ask him for, what his thoughts would be for a head coaching option. I think they will go and pick his brain a little bit because he is Nick Saban. He is, the greatest college football coach of all time. So you want to pick his brain. So it will not shock me if they go and do that. They still talk to Nick. Verge Osbury, he said on Matt Moscona's show, right, that he talks to Nick Saban a whole lot, and he's the one that's going to make this hire at LSU. And he even says that he doesn't believe that Nick Saban is going to be in the running for it either. So I think that's a pretty reliable source, knowing that, okay, the athletic director at LSU is saying this. That means most likely he's not going to be the head football coach at LSU. But we'll still follow it. And obviously, would I love Nick Saban at LSU? Oh, yeah. Oh, hell yeah. I mean, he's the greatest football coach, college football coach of all time. And if you can convince him, like, hey, I know your biggest professional regret was leaving LSU. This is a chance to kind of right a wrong, go back, build the program up. There's no pressure. We're not asking a whole lot. Maybe 4 years at the most is what we're looking at right here. So build it up and just, you can appoint your head football coach for Nick Saban. You can appoint your successor. So maybe you convince them and you throw enough money at Nick Saban. Like I said, like Nick Saban said, Miss Terry, that if you go to her with the money, I mean, she's probably going to make the decisions on it. So I'm going to be really curious to see how that plays out. But I appreciate those questions. Appreciate the comment there, Melissa Ward. Trevor Thibodeau, once again, Catholic High classmate of mine. Hope, Trevor's, you're doing good, my man. Hope everything's good with you. Trevor commented, love her fight, didn't love her execution. Don't love her execution. Yep. I mean, that's exactly right, Trevor. That is exactly it in a nutshell. We talk about this LSU Alabama game. I thought LSU was motivated to play, especially defensively. I think LSU played with their hairs on fire on defense. They're flying around the football. They were pressuring Ty Simpson. They're making them feel uncomfortable. That's probably as uncomfortable I've seen Ty Simpson play since the Florida State game, since the loss of Florida State. And that game was there to be had. But like you mentioned, when you had to, maybe you're a little amped up. Offensively, you had 10 penalties in the football game to only their 2 penalties. Every time in the red zone, you couldn't execute when you get inside the red zone, inside the 20-yard line, and a missed field goal. So you just couldn't get it done when it mattered most. And I think that's it. And now, do I think LSU is going to throw in the towel the rest of the season? I don't think so. I think there's a lot of pride, in terms of LSU to finish the season out. And you do have a stretch here. It's obviously not as tough as what you just endured, right? You had to play Ole Miss, South Carolina. You had to play Vanderbilt. Then you had another bye. Then you had Texas A&M. Yeah, I mean, Texas A&M, then you had Alabama. So it gets a little bit easier. I mean, it's not easy because you still have Oklahoma at the end of the season, but you have Arkansas. We'll talk about that game in a little bit, but that is a winnable game. And you have Western Kentucky. You should win that football game. It's going to be senior day for LSU as well. But you should be able to get to a bowl game. Right now, you're 5-4, and let's say, I mean, it's not impossible that LSU does finish the season 3-0. It's not that highly unlikely. Definitely 2-1, maybe 7-5. You finish your season at 8-4. Obviously, is the best you can finish, but there's some opportunities for the LSU football team down the line. What we'll talk about. Melissa, I appreciate the comment, Trevor. If you have any more questions, comments, we want y'all to be involved with the show, so make sure to comment below, as we'll be on here until 6 o'clock tonight. We'll talk about LSU football for about an hour and see what's going on around LSU. Melissa Ward, I just watched her in local news and saw the segment where the officer got shot in the leg. Mr. Andy said it was his half brother, sending prayers for him. Yep, so it was AJ Bryson. But AJ's doing well, and I appreciate all the prayers. If you saw the Facebook post from Andy, that is Andy's brother, AJ. And he is doing really good, though. He's in the hospital, and Andy talked to him. So he is doing really well. It was an unfortunate accident, and it just comes to his world today. It's really sad when stuff like that happens. But it just comes to show you guys, appreciate your police officers, appreciate your law enforcement, because that's kind of like your daily reminder right there that every single day they are out there to protect lives, and unfortunate situations like this, like it just comes with the territory, and it's really sad, but luckily it isn't worse than the worst situation. So just give your thanks that he's okay, and thanks to God he's okay. So make sure you give him your thoughts and prayers. But I appreciate that, Miss Melissa, for the comment there. But Andy says that he's doing well. So I know it hasn't been a great great month for the Bryson clan, especially Andy dealing with what he's been dealing with as well. But just keep your thoughts and prayers to him as well. I do appreciate that comment, Melissa. All right, so going back to the LSU Alabama game, another big storyline from this game. Obviously, we're 20 minutes in the show and we haven't even brought it up. We haven't mentioned it, but it is the Garrett Nussmeier situation, right? So he plays the first half. He plays the first drive of the third quarter, and then he gets pulled out. And then Michael Van Buren comes in. Now, statistically, you're going to look at Michael Van Buren's numbers, and they don't really pop off the page or anything, but you can tell that the offense was pretty effective with him in there. You had some drop passes that should have been caught. There was one that Trey'Dez Green, he easily had a first down. He drops it. It was inexcusable for him. I thought Van Buren looked really good when he got in there and he got a chance to play, and I want to see more of him. It's kind of a tough situation because they brought Michael Van Buren in here, right, to kind of redshirt. And that was kind of like, that was really the goal, going into the season. You go and you watch any interview with Brian Kelly before the start of the season. Really, that was the goal for Michael Van Buren. He started last year. He started as a freshman at Mississippi State. He's shown some flashes for the Bulldogs. Then he goes over here. He goes and transfers to LSU. And the whole point was like, okay, maybe I play 3-4 games, keep my red shirt and back up Garrett Nussmeier the whole season, learn from Garrett, and then it'll be my turn to lead the way next year. It'll be my turn to lead the offense next year. So that was kind of the goal, for him, get the NIL check, just kind of lay low, watch Garrett Nussmeier do his thing, learn every now and then 2026 is going to be Michael Van Buren's time to shine. But obviously how the season has gone, Garrett Nussmeier has underachieved this season. The season pretty much is done. And so you're kind of now looking with 3 games left. You're looking at, okay, what should we go from here? And Garrett Nussmeier, it's been tough. I mean, I hate it for Garrett because I do appreciate what Garrett's been through. It's you go and look at it. He's waited his turn. He's waited. Oh man, he signed under Ed Orgeron. He had his chances. He started against Arkansas. Actually, he was wearing number 5. It's kind of crazy. Then we're talking about that was the year that Orgeron got fired in 2021, and he was able to start against Arkansas, and he was at a point, do you keep his red shirt? I mean, that was kind of the conversation as well, and they decided to keep his red shirt, and that allowed John Trey Kirkland to start, the former wide receiver, to start that Texas Bowl game, and then that allowed Garrett Nussmeier to have this year. If he doesn't have that red shirt, you go back and look at it, that Texas Bowl situation, if he plays in the Texas Bowl, then he's not even eligible to play this year. So it does change a lot of things and a lot of thinking there. But you go back in his first couple of years, that was his freshman year, his redshirt freshman year. Then you go, and after that, you're in the quarterback battle, the quarterback competition. That's when LSU got Jaden Daniels. And Jaden Daniels was obviously a star through 2 years. And then you wait your turn. There were some whispers about Garrett Nussmeier transferring. He decided to not transfer. I think a big game was that SEC championship game in 2022. Him stepping up and playing and playing well in that SEC championship game, I think, has allowed him to stay. And he's kind of waited his turn. Wait another year when Jaden Daniels decided to come back in 2023. He comes back, and it's his year in 2024. Has a great first year, 4,000 yards passing, the most successful first year of a quarterback in LSU history. And so a lot of teams, NFL teams, have him as a first-round pick, and they're kind of looking at Garrett Nussmeier as like a first-round pick, and there were some conversations if Garrett Nussmeier should leave LSU and go to the NFL draft, or should he stay for another year at LSU because you saw what Jaden did in the second year at LSU, obviously what Joe Burrow did in his second year at LSU, and that was kind of the same thought process there. Garrett Nussmeier decided to stay, and you had the Heisman Trophy, preseason Heisman Trophy talk, and first round NFL first round draft pick talk, and unfortunately that has not gone Garrett Nussmeier's way this year, as a lot of people thought it would. He's been benched this year, not once but twice, and his team is not going to be playing for a national championship, and it's just not the storybook ending to Garrett Nussmeier's journey at LSU that a lot of people expected. And I hate it for him. I really do, because that is a lot of patience to wait your turn, and especially in this day of age of college football, to do that, to wait your turn and just wait for your opportunity and not leave and be loyal to your team. I respect Garrett Nussmeier for that. And if anything, what I'm going to remember from Garrett Nussmeier is that his ability to wait through the hard times and to go through it and to wait for your opportunity and not leave when there's been some adversity going your way. And that's something I do appreciate about Garrett. But at the same time, you also kind of need to look ahead and next year, because you're not going to get Garrett Nussmeier back. And Michael Van Buren, he is your guy. And, LSU's been more effective offensively with Michael Van Buren in the lineup. And you want to see what you got next year. So, and not only for yourself, but for Michael Van Buren, because Michael Van Buren, he might go to the transfer portal. You just never know. You can never rule out any possibility. So Frank Wilson said that they're going to play both guys. They're going to play both quarterbacks. I'm curious how that's going to look like. And that also kind of talks about Michael Van Buren in his red shirt. All right, Jennifer Alford Lejeune, I'm going to say AKA Mom, joining in on the show, has a question. Will we see Weeks hit the field on Saturday? So what I heard about Whit Weeks is good news when we talk about LSU and their star linebacker. And I've heard some really good things. They're saying that he is practicing today, is what I heard. So the thing that if he's practicing today is a really good sign, especially he's practicing, early to middle of the week. You get him back in the middle of the week is a really good sign. So we'll see. Frank Wilson will have another media availability on Thursday, so we'll find out then. But all signs are kind of pointing up to Whit Weeks returning back on the field. And we know how much the defense has missed Whit Weeks. You go and look and how LSU has played in the last couple of games, and they have not been. Now, I got to say Alabama, I thought they had a great game defensively, but it was a rough one against Texas A&M. You really struggled against Vanderbilt, really stopping them as well. So, I mean, it was tough to not have him on the field, and he's pretty much your heart and soul of your defense. So he is really the engine, not really of only the defense, but probably your team. He's pretty much the Energizer Bunny for your football team. And he brings the energy, he brings the juice to your football team. You're a different football team without him in the lineup. So I believe we'll see Whit Weeks come back. I know he's been on the boot, but today is an important day. Without any setback, I do believe Whit Weeks will be back this Saturday. Is what they're saying. I heard good stuff about Whit Weeks, and he's been dealing with the boot. So the quote from Frank Wilson says, "We'll see how he holds up today. Today is a pivotal day for him, and see how his body holds up. We're anxious to see how that happens. We could use his leadership and contributions on the field." So that is what Frank Wilson said today about Whit Weeks. So all signs pointing up is not a guarantee, but the signs are pointing up that Whit Weeks would see the field on Saturday. So I appreciate that comment there, guys. Like I said, feel free to join in with any questions, any statements about the team. And my question to you is, where do you see LSU finish the season record-wise through these 3 games left on the season? So we'll talk about that as well. If you have a record prediction, remember LSU plays Arkansas on Saturday, an early kickoff. That's going to be getting used to after a lot of 6:30 kickoffs this year. You finally get an 11:30 kickoff. So bright and early on Saturday morning is when LSU will play Arkansas for the Golden Boot. So still a rivalry that is really revered by LSU and Arkansas. So you get a chance to win the Golden Boot trophy. And in the season, I mean, you got this game, you got Western Kentucky and Oklahoma. You go and beat Arkansas in a rivalry game. You have Western Kentucky Senior Day. You go and take care of business there. And then Oklahoma, man, that road game against Oklahoma, hey, play spoiler, right? Oklahoma, and it depends on what happens with Oklahoma playing against Alabama on Saturday. But let's say Oklahoma does win that game. They beat Alabama. You have a chance to ruin their season because right now Oklahoma is still battling for a college football playoff berth, and you have a chance to ruin their season, ruin their opportunity in the last regular season game of the year if they still have 2 losses. So LSU, as bad as the season went, and as kind of like as a laughing stock they are right now in terms of the governor being involved and, firing Brian Kelly and trying to pay him with the buyout and dealing with all this going on with LSU, you have an opportunity here to end the season on the high mark. Kind of looking at you end the season at 8-4, considering how this was going in the middle of the season. Not too bad, considering you fired your coach, the governor's getting your AD, you fired your AD, your head football coach, your offensive coordinator, all of this going on, and you still finish the season 8-4 would be something to talk about. But step one, you have to go and beat Arkansas, which, they're also trying to find a head football coach as well. You're battling with Arkansas, you're battling with Florida, you're battling with Auburn. So it is going to be, it is going to be interesting to see how LSU finishes the season. How does LSU manage this quarterback situation? It's going to be interesting, not only because you got Garrett Nussmeier, right? I mean, 5th-year senior. Do you try to do him right? At the end of the season, try to give him an opportunity to play again, or hey, let's give the young guy a shot. You can tell that LSU has a little bit of a spark with Michael Van Buren in there. And I firmly believe Michael Van Buren's played really well when he's gotten the opportunity to play. It's just haven't seen him got to play that often. And the question here for LSU is when I talked about at the very beginning of the show, and that is the red shirt when we talk about Michael Van Buren. So the red shirt rule I talked about with Garrett Nussmeier. Garrett Nussmeier played 3 games back in 2021, and the question was, do you play that 4th game, and do you burn that red shirt, I'm sorry, 5 games. You can play 4 games. The 5th game will burn your red shirt. So right now, Michael Van Buren, he's played the Southeastern game, he's played the Alabama game, and there was another game he played. It was a Texas A&M game. So he's played 3 games, right? That means he can afford 1 more game to play without burning his red shirt. So that is something that Frank Wilson, Alex Atkins, Tim Bertay, the quarterback coach, that's something they're all going to have to figure out. Kind of the same situation with Garrett Nussmeier years ago. Is do you burn his red shirt? I mean, you have other options, right? You can play Garrett Nussmeier, or you can play Colin Hurley. If you want to see what Colin Hurley has to offer, you can play Colin Hurley in the 3 games. If you want to keep, that's if you want to keep Michael Van Buren's red shirt. So that is going to be something to keep an eye on. I think LSU will not. I think LSU will burn his red shirt. I really believe that because you also want to see what you have for next year. and if he's going to be your guy next year. Because if Michael Van Buren balls out, he balls out against Arkansas, Western Kentucky, and Oklahoma, and maybe the bowl game too, he's your guy, and you know he's your guy. But let's say he struggled, he's up and down. You kind of know that, okay, next year LSU is in the quarterback transfer market. And LSU, let's just say, has had really good fortunes in the quarterback transfer portal market. I mean, look at the two best quarterbacks that's ever played, most successful quarterbacks that's played at LSU. Joe Burrow, transfer quarterback from Ohio State. Jaden Daniels, transfer quarterback from Arizona State. So does LSU go in the transfer portal again and get themselves a quarterback? Look at Indiana this year. Fernando Mendoza is the Heisman Trophy candidate, a leading candidate for Indiana right now. Indiana's undefeated. They're the number 2 team in the country. He is a transfer quarterback in his first year with Indiana. He came over from Cal. So that comes to show you transfer portal, NIL, even though there's some negatives around it, the positives are you can turn around your team pretty quickly, and you can make your team a national championship contending team. Just look at Texas Tech as well, Indiana, Vanderbilt. Look at some of these teams, Georgia Tech, some of these teams that don't usually are not in the hunt. Now all of a sudden you're in the hunt because you can bring them over through NIL and a transfer portal. So as dire as it looks for LSU right now, you can change your fortunes really quick with the right coach in place and the right situation in place. In terms of that, in terms of coaches, I really think LSU, like I keep saying, I'm not going to change my opinion on this in terms of the LSU coaching search. I think LSU is going to go young. I think they're going to go with a young mind. I wouldn't say, anybody under or anybody over 55 is out the running, right? But you have to have somebody that is in the know-how and is in the now with what I just talked about, with the transfer portal, with NIL, with those situations. You have to be in the know-how of those things. And whether it's a guy like Lane Kiffin, right? Whether it's a guy like Kenny Dillingham, John Summerall, all these guys, right? I think you're going to go with like a younger coach that wants to coach in like the NIL space, that wants to deal with roster management and having a general manager and dealing with things like that. That is kind of like you're dealing with the NFL, but when you're at the highest level of the NFL. So that's the thing there. I think LSU is going to go after a younger coach. And look at this, guys. I don't think it's such a guarantee that LSU is going to go with a head coach with head coaching experience, right? Look at around college football. Look who are some of the most experienced, I guess, like the best names in coaching right now in college football, right? They are guys that are first year, that are really head football coaches for the first time at their universities. Look at it, right? Dan Lanning is at Oregon. Remember, when Dan Lanning took the Oregon job, Dan Lanning never had head coaching experience. He was at Georgia as the defensive coordinator, right? And he gets his opportunity at Oregon, and you see what he's doing at Oregon. Kirby Smart, who's the best football coach since Nick Saban's gone. Nick Saban's retired. Who is probably the face of college football? Who's probably the best coach right now in the country? It's probably Kirby Smart. Kirby Smart, remember, when he took the Georgia head coaching job, he was a coordinator at Alabama under Nick Saban. So Glenn Schumann might be a guy to keep an eye on for LSU. Not just throwing a name out there, right? I mean, he is Kirby Smart's defensive coordinator. He knows what it's like to coach in the SEC. He's a great defensive mind, great defensive coordinator. Maybe you give him a shot. And because he's a young, hungry coach that wants to be a head football coach, right? So, and LSU is still a job where it's like a top 5, wherever you want to rank it, right? Top 5, top 10 head coaching job in the country in terms of college football is concerned. So it's still a really coveted job. We can talk about all the things going on with Governor Landry and trying to figure out who the athletic director is and all of that. But I think LSU's kind of settled a little bit in the last week. Getting a president, getting a athletic director, and kind of stabilizing a little bit that way. And I think the biggest thing is for Frank Wilson, if you keep that recruiting class intact. I know they did lose a commitment over the weekend as well. I think there's the first commitment they've lost since Brian Kelly was fired. But if you keep it, keep the recruiting class intact, then it's still going to be a pretty coveted job for LSU. I mean, we talk about LSU. I mean, the 3 coaches before Brian Kelly all won national championships. Nick Saban, Les Miles, Ed Orgeron. So they've each won national championships. So you can win a national championship at LSU. And you've shown that you win a national championship at LSU. You got the state of Louisiana, which has been covering Louisiana high school football for such a long time. I can put Louisiana with pretty much about anybody in terms of the talent, in terms of per capita, in terms of the talent in the state of Louisiana. I could put it with anybody. So you got a lot to work with when you're in Louisiana. I still think it's going to be a young coach that with some of the prove that has proven something like an Alex Golish, like Memphis's coach right now, and like Summerall. Like Kenny Dillingham a whole lot from Arizona State. He's a guy that I really like. So I'm curious who y'all would want as y'all head coach. I mean, we talked about the Nick Saban stuff earlier. I think it'd be really cool to see Nick Saban at LSU. I just don't see that happening because Nick Saban made it clear why he left and why he left college football. It's dealing with the NIL, dealing with the transfer portal. To get a coach in this day of age, it's different. Like college football has changed. I would say not even 10 years ago. I would say 5 years ago. It's changed since 5 years ago. And I think that's one of the reasons why Brian Kelly struggled at LSU. I think Brian Kelly was a really successful coach pre-NIL. And coming over at LSU, it was a different story because, he knew he had the talent. He knew he had the ability to win a national championship. It's just at a higher level with the SEC, and you got to do it in the midst of NIL, name, image, and likeness, and the transfer portal. So he's had to do this in the midst of this turnaround. In roster management, I mean, he had to find Austin Thomas, get Austin Thomas on board as a general manager of the LSU football team to kind of manage the roster. And, when LSU lined up its offense, the defense fell apart. When they had Jay Daniels and Malik Neighbors and all those guys, the defense fell apart, and vice versa, right? When they finally get all these guys this year on defense, the offense is underachieving. So trying to manage the roster both ways is something that Brian Kelly did not do at LSU, and that's a big reason why he's not here anymore as head coach at LSU. Yep, Mom with a comment again. Is Kiffin still one of the front runners? If so, what are your thoughts? He's a front runner. I can tell you that. He is a front runner. Everybody's still going to be looking at Lane Kiffin. I think it's Lane Kiffin's sweepstakes because that's your problem, Mom. You're dealing with Auburn. You're dealing with Florida. You're dealing with all these other schools and Ole Miss because I guarantee you Ole Miss is going to try to do whatever they can to try to keep Lane Kiffin. So that's another thing, too. They've been trying to get Lane Kiffin to sign his extension for so long. He is still one of LSU's front runners. I think right now he's probably your top name if you're LSU because of all those things I just talked about, right? Who do I want as a head football coach at LSU? You want somebody that's young. Lane Kiffin's still a young coach, right? Even though he's been around for a long time, he's been, but that's why he was really, really young when he started as head coach in in the SEC and the NFL. I remember he was head coach at Tennessee, head coach of the Raiders, head coach of USC. But he had to improve a lot on his life, his personal life, and he had to mature as a head football coach. And he got to Alabama, Nick Saban, and I think that when he was the offensive coordinator under Nick Saban, and I think that experience working for Nick Saban has really helped him mature as a coach. And you saw what he did for Atlantic and now Ole Miss. And yeah, I mean, because he's still young. I'm not sure exactly what Lane Kiffin's age is now. Let's see. So Lane Kiffin is 50 years old. So it's still really young, as a head coach. So 50 years old, he knows how to win in this day of age. He knows how to win in the NIL era. He's been great with the transfer portal. I think he's been probably the best coach in college football in terms of the transfer portal and getting guys to Ole Miss and getting guys to convince them to come to Ole Miss for the transfer portal. So this is a guy that's comfortable winning in the NIL. He's comfortable winning in the transfer portal. He knows what it takes to win in the SEC because he's currently winning in the SEC. Ole Miss, they are on the doorstep of a college football playoff berth right now. So obviously, you want Lane Kiffin. He's an offensive mastermind. Look what he's doing with Trinidad Chambliss as a quarterback. He is a Division II transfer. He was at a Division II school last year. He transfers over to Ole Miss, and Trinidad Chambliss looks like a star in his offense. That's what he brings to the table. And Lane Kiffin is the head coach at LSU. It is going to be a fun brand of football to watch because he brings an exciting offense. He's a fun, interesting guy himself. He gets involved maybe too much on Twitter, but he's going to speak his mind. And I think his personality is going to fit in Baton Rouge. I think his personality will fit with Baton Rouge and with the fans. Because he's a little bit of unhinged, and we know how our Louisiana fans are. So I think it's going to be a match made in heaven. But that's the question, right? Will he consider LSU? I think if this happened maybe 5 years ago, I think he leaves for LSU. Now I'm not really sure if he leaves for LSU because in 5 years ago he probably would have said, well, same thing what Brian Kelly would say. I want to go to LSU to win a national championship and compete for a national championship. Right now, he's at Ole Miss where he's not having as much pressure. Ole Miss is really enjoying him really right now. And they only have one loss, and they're in the college football playoff, especially how far they make the college football playoff. He might, if they make the quarterfinals or they make the semifinals, he might be thinking in his mind, I can win a national championship at Ole Miss. Why should I leave Ole Miss? So that's going to be a thing to watch out for, especially how long does LSU want to wait? And that's going to be the thing. If you want to wait for Lane Kiffin, you can wait for Lane Kiffin because it's not going to be immediate hire. You're going to have to go through the national signing day. You're going to have to go through national signing day period first. And you got to hope that your recruiting class stays intact. That's kind of the biggest thing because if your recruits are going, your players are going, and at the end of the day, you can be Bear Bryant, you can be Nick Saban, you can be Vince Lombardi, but if you don't have the Jimmys and Joes, you're not going to win. So you got to keep that recruiting class intact too. So how long will LSU wait is going to be the question because depending on how far Lane Kiffin is going to go, you might be looking in late December, early January, and still don't have a head football coach. When LSU hired Brian Kelly, they hired Brian Kelly like before the bowl game, like early December. They hired Brian Kelly because they didn't make the college football playoff. I mean, they were like the 5th or 16th. They were in the running, but he knew they weren't going to make the college football playoff. So that was an opportunity for him to leave at the time he did. Now with the expanded college football playoff, you might have to wait for Lane Kiffin to come on. So Mom says, we definitely need someone who can fit in. Yeah, I mean, I know you're gung-ho, Mom, on that, on the fit, right? And I know a lot of LSU fans are on that too about the fit, because of in terms of your head coach and fit. I don't think there will be a coach that fits more than what Ed Orgeron did because he's a Louisiana guy. He grew up in the swamp. He grew up, shrimp farming as well, with his dad, down there in Cutoff, Louisiana, right? But he's got the accent and everything. There's not going to be a fit more than Ed Orgeron. Mom says, yeah, that's true. Yes, yes. That's her guy. I know that, Ed Orgeron. But go Tigers. Yep. Go Tigers. Yep. But Ed Orgeron, yeah, I mean, he wants to go back at LSU. He did mention that. He does want to be talking. He does. Now we're talking. I like that. He does want to go back to LSU. Now, I think he's open to being not even the head coach at LSU. I think he's open to being the defensive line coach, recruiting coordinator. And I think the only way that happens if you hire Lane Kiffin, because Lane Kiffin and Ed Orgeron are really good buddies. They're really close. So I think that would work. If you hire Lane Kiffin, I'm sure Ed Orgeron, I think he would jump on board. Because my thing with Ed Orgeron, if you bring him in as a defensive line coach or as a recruiting coordinator, he might have the ego saying, like, hey, I was the head coach here at LSU. I won a national championship here. You haven't, that kind of thing. But if it's with a friend of his like Lane Kiffin, that could change things a little bit. I think that can work. If Lane Kiffin comes as a head coach, that Ed Orgeron is probably going to be on his staff, knowing Lane Kiffin and how close they are. But it's not going to happen in terms of I know you wish this, Mom. I know you want him to be the head coach again at LSU, but considering how it ended after the national championship, that ship has sailed, and it was like he won't be the head coach at LSU. There's just no way with how everything ended at the end with him at LSU. But I do not rule him out being an assistant coach at LSU or coming back in some capacity at LSU, because you've seen coaches do that all the time. I mean, look at Steve Spurrier. I mean, after being the head coach at Florida and being that successful at Florida, you saw what he did come back and helping these head coaches out. Nick Saban, he still has his own office in Alabama. He helped Kalen DeBoer just get simulated a little bit and situated when Kalen DeBoer was hired to be Nick Saban's replacement after Alabama. How much are we – okay, so Trevor again. How much are we hurting our coaching search with all the bad press from Jeff Landry to BK lawsuit? It doesn't help, Trevor. I mean, I'm not going to lie. It does not help. It's not a great look. And right now, I think what it hurts most is like just the national perception of LSU. I think that's what that hurts the most. You look at SEC shorts and they're picking fun at LSU, and you kind of look across the country in the media, they're poking fun at LSU. And maybe that'll scare. I think that'll probably scare off. Maybe, and that's why one of those reasons I don't think Lane Kiffin is going to be the head coach at LSU. And I think it does hurt it in that aspect, because Lane Kiffin, why leave? I mean, you're at Ole Miss, you're winning games, you're on the brink of a college football playoff, and I think Ole Miss might build a statue along with naming the Mannings on their streets. It might be another Kiffin Street at Ole Miss. That's how much he's winning over there and how much they appreciate him over there. And I think Ole Miss fans are satisfied with Lane Kiffin. And why would he leave that, right? I think it scares some of those bigger names off, but I still think you can get a great coach, Trevor. I really do. That's why I say go young, go hungry. There's a lot of great coaches out there, and it takes about the right fit, like Mom said, right? The right fit, and it could happen. So, like I talked about, some of the best coaches in college football right now have no head coaching experience before taking that job. Kirby Smart is the best coach in the country right now. He's had no college football head coaching experience before Georgia. He's won 2 national championships at Georgia. Look at him right now. Look at Dan Lanning. Dan Lanning, he has Oregon consistently competing for Big Ten championships, for SEC championship. Big Ten championship, college football playoff, all that. And look at Kirk Cignetti. Kirk Cignetti right now from Indiana. Now he's been a head coach before, but he's never been a big time Power 4 head coach before. And look what he's doing in Indiana. So there's a lot of great coaches out there that you can go and get. And there's going to be some young, hungry coaches. I do like a guy I talk about, Glenn Schumann, at Georgia as the defensive coordinator. Hey, if it works, don't fool with it. If that formula works, go and hire him, right? He's a defensive coordinator under Kirby Smart. They're winning a lot of games. They're winning some championships. Go after him. Kelvin Shepherd. Now Kelvin Shepherd might be a little bit of a risk because he is the defensive coordinator for the Detroit Lions, and this is his first year as the defensive coordinator for the Lions. He has no head coaching experience, but hey, he's eventually going to be a head coach. Might as well get him early. And he played at LSU. I think that's a big thing. He played at LSU. He knows what the culture's like at LSU. He won't, and I think he knows that, right? So he's another guy. You can mention a popular name as well. Not a head football coach, Joe Brady. You can get a Joe Brady. Joe Brady, maybe 5 years ago, was not going to be the head coach at LSU. He probably would have turned it down, but with NIL, and because he didn't want to be involved with recruiting, but with NIL now, hey, he can go and say, hey, how much you want? And not really have to really build relationships as much because, hey, nowadays in college football, a checkbook does recruiting for you. So you can kind of rely on that even more. There's some great coaches you go out there. I like Kenny Dillingham. I like Eric Morris. I like Ryan Silverfield in Memphis. There are a lot of Alex Golesh at South Florida, Brent Key at Georgia Tech. There are a lot of great coaches. Summerall, yes, Mom. So John Summerall, he is the head football coach at Tulane. So his name's been getting thrown out a whole lot. John Summerall, he's a young football coach. He's got Tulane winning a whole lot, and I think right now there's been a lot of rumors going around that John Summerall might go to Auburn. But this is a young up-and-coming coach. He's only 43 years old. So he's still a really young coach at 43 years old. Now he's at Tulane. Now, Willie Fritz left a great situation for John Summerall because Willie Fritz was winning at Tulane before Willie Fritz left for Houston. But he's done a great job at Tulane. Overall, as a head coach, whether it was at Troy or Tulane, he's had a 39-11 record. So he's won, whether it's at Troy, at Tulane. He's got a great personality. I think the personality would fit right in with LSU, knowing him, a energetic young guy to be a head coach. But that's a question. Is that too big of a step? You're going to have question marks if you're going to go that route, no matter if you go for a John Summerall or Alex Golesh or a Ryan Silverfield or a Kenny Dillingham. I like Kenny Dillingham because he's a really young coach, but he's already experienced some success. He's already experienced success at Arizona State. They made the college football playoff last year. They won the conference last year in the Big 12, and he's shown that he can win in the NIL era, and he's still a young coach with a lot to prove. That's why I like a guy like Kenny Dillingham too. So that's just a name to throw out right there for LSU, but there are some names out there. You don't have to go out and get the big name to land the head coaching gig. Look at Texas A&M. They hired Mike Elko. Mike Elko had 1 or 2 years at Duke, and they hire him. Look at Texas A&M right now. They are undefeated in the SEC, and they are a legit favorite to go and win the national championship. So that's kind of my theme here, guys. The big name is if you get a Lane Kiffin, yeah, that's nice. That's nice and all. It's going to make a lot of headlines, but at the end of the day, winning games is big, and you don't have to go if you get the right person for the job and the guy that's hungry the most, then you can go out and get him. So that's kind of my point, is that there are some really great coaches around college football that aren't exactly the big name, and they just got something to prove. Look at Nick Saban. Nick Saban, when he got to LSU, was not the Nick Saban nobody knew who he was when he got to LSU. I mean, some people probably remember him with the Cleveland Browns as a defensive coordinator with Bill Belichick, or at Michigan State, but he wasn't a household name when he took the LSU head coaching job. So I think it's just the right fit, and just getting a guy that knows how to win in this day of age and can embrace Louisiana, like Ed Orgeron said, and it's just the right man for the job. Gary Cox, I like him. So I guess I'm not sure who you're referring to, Gary. Are you referring to Dillingham, or are you referring to John Sumrall? I'm trying to get your comment real quick, Gary, on that. I believe you're talking about Kenny Dillingham, but we'll see. Mom says yes. Okay. So, yeah, guys, that's pretty much about it. If it were up to me, I would go with Kenny Dillingham right now as my coach at LSU, if it were up to me. But we'll see. There's a lot of great candidates out there. Now, I'm not going to turn down Lane Kiffin or Nick Saban to come here. I'm going to be ecstatic about that. If they get a Nick Saban, obviously he's the greatest college football coach of all time. I just find it highly unlikely that Nick Saban does come back, and I find it highly unlikely that Lane Kiffin leaves. So Gary Cox says yes. So I like Kenny Dillingham from Arizona State. I think he checks a lot of boxes for me. And I think LSU's had some success. Now, different sport, but they've had success getting guys from the West Coast. Look at Jay Johnson, Arizona baseball coach. So, hey, you hire the Arizona baseball coach. Look what he's doing at LSU baseball. Hey, hire the Arizona State football coach and let him come over here. Maybe that's all I can say about that. But, guys, thank y'all so much for watching the show. Yeah, LOL. Hey, I mean, the reason you can't beat the logic or reason right there. So it worked for baseball. Might as well work for football. Go get yourself the whoever's coaching in Arizona, right? Whether it's Arizona or Arizona State, go and get him. So maybe that's what you got to do. But, guys, thank y'all so much for the comments. Gary, Mom, Trevor, Melissa. Appreciate everybody that's commented on the show here today. And, we'll try to catch up on Sunday if I can to recap the LSU-Arkansas game. I think it's a big game for LSU. Looking forward to see what they do with the quarterback situation with Michael Van Buren and how they go from there, and how they kind of manage that with Garrett Nussmeier and Michael Van Buren, because I think you got to see what you got in Michael Van Buren. And hey, LSU, as bad as it's looked, guys, still have a chance to win 9 games. You go and look at it. Think about that, guys. If they beat Arkansas, they beat Western Kentucky, and they beat Oklahoma, you win the bowl game, you're 9-4. So this season can pick up, really good at the end of the season if it does. And you end the season on a strong note at 9-4, get you some optimism with a new head football coach going into the next year. Things can always be worse, guys. That's all I'm saying. Great show. Thanks, Mom. Appreciate it. Well, guys, thank y'all so much for watching the show. Make sure to subscribe to our channel, whether you're watching us, whether you're on Facebook, X, YouTube, and make sure to share it out. Make sure to share out the show. I'll have a game preview about LSU and Arkansas. Make sure to check that out on our website. I think I'll have that posted by Friday at gridironfootballusa.com. Not only we got an LSU show, we got our high school shows. We got our Ballin' in the Boot show. We have a Monday edition. We talk about the high school playoffs. We posted that. Go check that out, Ballin' in the Boot. We talk about Louisiana high school football. We'll have a Friday night segment, Friday night show, and a Monday show. We also have our Going Bowling show. We talk about Gridiron Football All-American Bowl game. Myself and former LSU quarterback Marcus Randall will talk about the Gridiron Football Bowl game commitments. And then our player of the week. We'll go over our player of the week as well every Thursday at 5 o'clock. Thank you guys so much for watching. We'll see you all next week on another edition of The Chase with Jace.